There comes a moment, quiet, private, when you're sitting alone, maybe after dinner, maybe while folding laundry, and a thought slips in. Should I finally tell them? Not because you want to cause pain, but because you're tired of holding it all in. You're older now. You've lived through storms and seasons. Your children have grown, started families of their own, and somewhere deep down, you start to believe maybe they deserve to know everything. But stop, just for a moment, and let me say something you may have never heard before. Not every truth should be told. Not to your children, not now, not ever. You see, there's a kind of wisdom that only comes with age, and part of that wisdom is silence. Silence that protects, not hides. Silence that loves, not deceives. Silence that says, I've carried this burden so you wouldn't have to. In this video, we're going to talk about 7 secrets you should never share with your children, no matter how old they are or how close you think you've become. Not because you're dishonest, but because you are their parent. And parenting doesn't stop at 18. It just becomes more sacred. Each of these 7 secrets can quietly crack the foundation of love, respect, and memory between you and your child, without you ever meaning to. And if you've ever caught yourself wanting to finally get it off your chest, this message is especially for you. But before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Have you ever held something back, not out of fear, but out of love? Leave a comment below, and let's support each other in this journey of aging with grace. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to ElderLife Wisdom. This space is here for you. Always. Now, let's talk about the first thing you should never say, no matter how tempted you are. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But you'd be surprised how many parents, good, loving parents, have let these words slip, sometimes in a softer way. I could have finished university if I didn't have kids so early. If I had waited a few more years, maybe my life would have turned out better. You're not trying to hurt them. You're just speaking from a place of exhaustion, maybe even truth. And after all these years, you think they can handle it. But here's the thing. Your child, no matter how old they are, still needs to believe that their presence in your life was a blessing, not a burden. That even in your most difficult seasons, their existence added something beautiful, not something that held you back. Because when you say otherwise, what they hear isn't your pain, it's their shame. They begin to question everything. Was I a mistake? Did I ruin my parents' dreams? Would their life have been better without me? And once those questions sink in, there's no way to undo them. No amount of "I didn't mean it like that" can erase the bruise it leaves behind. Your truth might be real, but not every truth is healing. Some truths, when shared, don't connect you to your children. They separate you. So hold that thought gently. Let it live in your journal, not in their heart. Now let's move to something just as fragile. What happens when the truth isn't about your child, but about the person you once promised forever to? Maybe it happened a long time ago. Maybe no one ever found out. Maybe it's something you've already made peace with. But one quiet afternoon, sitting across from your now-grown child, you feel it rise. The urge to finally come clean, to say, I cheated on your mother, or there was someone else, for years. You think they're old enough now. You think they'll understand. But what you're really doing is handing them a wound they never asked for. Because in that moment, they stop being your child and start becoming your confessor, your judge, your emotional sponge. You force them to choose sides in a war that ended years ago. You make them question their childhood. Was it all fake? Were those Christmas mornings and birthday parties just a performance? Your truth doesn't set them free. It traps them in your guilt, and that's not a burden they were ever meant to carry. If you've made peace with your past, if you've made amends with your partner or your God, then let that be enough. You don't need to redeem yourself through your child's forgiveness. Let them keep their memories intact. Let them keep believing in the love that raised them, even if it was imperfect. That's a gift only you can protect. Now, speaking of love, what if the person you married wasn't the one your heart truly belonged to? Let's talk about that next. It often starts with a sigh, a soft smile. Maybe you're flipping through old photographs, or a familiar song comes on the radio, and you say it, almost without thinking. She wasn't my first love. Before your father, there was someone I never stopped thinking about. You think it's harmless, a sweet bit of nostalgia. But what your child hears is this: our family was your second choice. Suddenly, their whole life feels like it was built on a compromise. They begin to wonder if the love between their parents was ever real or just a consolation prize. And worse, they might start to see themselves as part of that compromise, like they only exist because your true love didn't work out. You may believe you're just sharing a memory, but what you're really doing is rewriting history. And when you rewrite history, you rewrite their identity. Because for children, yes, even grown ones, their sense of self is built on the story of where they came from. And if you plant doubt in that story, it grows roots. Deep ones, roots that can twist their confidence, their understanding of love, even their future relationships. So let the memory stay yours. Keep it in the quiet corners of your heart. Not because it wasn't real, but because the love you chose to live with, the one that built a home, raised a family, held through seasons, that's the love that deserves the spotlight. Now let's move to something even more delicate: the hidden emotional battles you've faced, and why they shouldn't always be revealed. There are days you remember too clearly. The nights you cried in silence, the mornings you couldn't get out of bed, the moments when life felt so heavy you weren't sure you'd make it through. You've carried those memories for decades. And now, with your children grown and caring, it's tempting to open up fully, to say things like, "I used to sit in the car and scream before coming inside. There were nights I didn't want to live." You think sharing that truth will create closeness, but sometimes it creates confusion, or worse, fear. Because unless you've walked through the dark and come out the other side with healing, not just hurt, what you're offering isn't vulnerability, it's collapse. And when a parent collapses emotionally in front of their child, even an adult one, the roles reverse. They become the caretaker. They start worrying about your past and your pain instead of living their own life freely. Your story matters. Your struggles matter. But if you're still bleeding from them, so don't hand them over to your child like an open wound. Instead, if you share, let it be a full story, with scars, not gashes. Let it be a story of rising, not just falling. Because what they need from you now is not just honesty, it's hope. And speaking of pain that lingers, there's one confession that can fracture a family in seconds: when love isn't spread equally. You might think they already know. You might even say it with a chuckle. Well, your brother was the easy one. You were always the troublemaker. It sounds harmless, like a joke, a little family teasing between grown-ups. But to a child, even a child in their 40s, 50s, or beyond, those words cut deep. Every child looks at themselves through the eyes of their parents. They carry your words like truth, long after you forget you ever said them. And when you admit, even playfully, that one child was more lovable, more gifted, or simply less difficult. You're not just making a comment. You're branding them. You're confirming the quiet suspicion that maybe, just maybe, they weren't enough for you. Favoritism, even unintentional, creates invisible divides that echo through decades. It strains sibling relationships. It seeds jealousy and shame. And most of all, it turns your love into something conditional, something they feel they had to earn. In your heart, you may love all your children deeply, differently, yes, but equally. So if that's true, let your words reflect it. Speak the kind of love that reassures, that restores, that says, you are and have always been deeply enough. Now, let's go even deeper into something many parents think but almost never admit. What happens when you once felt the urge to walk away from it all? There are moments in every parent's life, moments of exhaustion, overwhelm, maybe even despair, when leaving feels easier than staying. You might have stood in the hallway once, suitcase in hand, or sat in your car, staring at the steering wheel, thinking, what if I just kept driving? You didn't do it. You stayed. You showed up. But now, years later, you feel safe enough to say it aloud. There was a time I wanted to run away. From the house, from the marriage, from the noise, from being a parent. And you think sharing that moment will show your humanity, your struggle, your survival. But to your child, it can sound like this. I almost left you. You were nearly abandoned. Even if they're adults now, even if they're parents themselves, that admission plants a seed of insecurity that can grow into something heavy. They'll wonder, did you ever really want me? Were you only here out of duty, not love? They may never say those words aloud, but trust me, they'll feel them. And no matter how much time has passed, the fear of having almost been left doesn't age well. So what do you do with that memory? You honor it quietly. You let it live in your journal, in your prayers, in the silent gratitude that somehow you found the strength to stay. And now, let's explore one last confession that seems harmless, but can quietly crush a child's sense of self when you see your own failures reflected in them. There's something bittersweet about seeing yourself in your children. You notice the way they speak, the choices they make, even their mistakes. And it's like looking into a mirror of your younger self. And in a quiet, vulnerable moment, you might say something like, you remind me of who I used to be, always too trusting. Or, I was the same way, and it cost me everything. You think you're bonding, being honest, maybe even warning them. But what you're really doing is planting doubt, not in their decisions, but in who they are. When you say they're repeating your path, and that your path ended in disappointment, what they hear is, you're doomed to become me, and I failed. Even if you mean well, even if you want to protect them, those words can paralyze instead of empower. Because your child isn't your unfinished story. They are their own book, still being written. And if you hand them your regrets like a prophecy, they might stop believing in their ability to write a better ending. So yes, share your wisdom, share your lessons, but never frame your child as a reflection of your brokenness. They deserve to see themselves through a lens of hope, not history. And now that we've walked through these 7 quiet truths, the question is, what should we do with the secrets we carry? Maybe after hearing all this, you're sitting with a heavy heart. Maybe you're thinking, so, I just carry all this alone. And the answer is, not exactly. You see, keeping a secret doesn't mean burying it inside until it eats you alive. It means being wise about where you place your pain. Your children aren't the place. Not because they aren't kind, not because they wouldn't care, but because they shouldn't have to. If the weight of your past still aches in your bones, don't pass it on like a baton in a race. Write it in a journal where no one is judged. Pray it into the night where no one interrupts, or bring it to someone trained to hold it. A counselor, a therapist, a trusted friend your age who truly understands. Because parenting doesn't end when your child turns 18. It just evolves. And in this stage of life, your role is something sacred. To show them what it means to grow older with grace. To model strength, not by revealing every scar, but by showing how you've healed. To be the calm in their storm, not the storm they must calm. Your wisdom now isn't just in what you know. It's in what you choose to keep sacred. It's in choosing protection over confession, dignity over drama, legacy over release. Conclusion: because in the end, you're not hiding the truth. You're protecting the heart that once trusted you with everything. As we grow older, real strength isn't found in saying everything we feel. It's found in knowing what not to say, because love sometimes speaks loudest through silence. You don't owe your children every detail of your pain. What you owe them is peace, a steady presence, a quiet example of how to carry life's weight with grace. If this message touched something in you, don't just listen. Reflect. Ask yourself, would sharing this help them or hurt them? Let that answer guide you. And if you found this video helpful, leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you're carrying, or simply that you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to ElderLife Wisdom, because every day we're building a life of dignity, not just age. You're not alone. You're becoming wiser. And that is a beautiful thing.